when Eli texted me on a random Thursday night, "Want to come to our lake house for a few days? You could use the break." I almost said no. I had deadlines, emails, noise, but maybe that was the point. I hadn't been sleeping well, and my brain felt like a screen with too many tabs open. So I said yes. 3 days later, we were on the road, windows down, the sound of indie rock spilling out into the countryside. Eli had always been the carefree one of those guys who could get a flat tire and call it an adventure. We'd been friends since sophomore year, roommates for a while, and somehow always managed to keep things simple between us. No drama, just easy company. I didn't ask many questions about the lake house. I figured it would be quiet, empty, the kind of place where you fall asleep to the sound of crickets and wake up to birds you can't name. What I didn't expect was that we wouldn't be alone. We pulled into the gravel driveway around late afternoon. The sun was just starting to dip, casting golden slants of light through the trees. The house itself looked like something out of a rustic magazine. All weathered wood and wraparound porch with rocking chairs that actually looked used. As we unloaded the car, I heard footsteps on the dock. Someone was already there, tall, broad-shouldered, casting a long shadow in the low light. "Oh, hey," Eli called out casually. "Gavin's here. I didn't think he'd make it this week." Gavin? I hadn't seen him in years. Not since some college party where he showed up, stayed for 15 minutes, and left with a girl who looked like she walked out of a perfume ad. Gavin was Eli's older brother by nearly a decade. Quiet, reserved, and always carrying the weight of someone who'd lived a few lives before you even figured out your first. He turned as we approached the porch. His hair was a little longer than I remembered, streaked with sun and silver at the temples. His face, older now, sure, but softer somehow. Tired in a way that wasn't sad, just still. "Didn't know you were coming," he said, his voice low but not unfriendly. "Last-minute invite," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. He nodded once, then held the screen door open for me. That was all. No handshake, no smile, but somehow I felt acknowledged. Fully, in a way most people don't bother with. The inside of the house smelled like cedar and lemon. It was cool, quiet, filled with books and blankets and the kind of silence that wraps around you instead of swallowing you whole. I dropped my bag in the guest room and looked out the window. Gavin was back on the dock, sitting alone, his legs dangling over the edge. The lake shimmered beneath him like glass. That evening, we ate grilled corn and leftover ribs from some barbecue Gavin had apparently driven into town for. Eli talked nonstop as usual, rambling about office gossip and bad dates, while Gavin listened. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it was never pointless. One comment, well-placed, would cut through the noise and leave a trail of thought behind. At one point, I looked up and caught Gavin watching me, not in a dramatic movie scene kind of way, just observing, studying, noticing, and for some reason that made my skin heat more than anything else had in months. That night, after Eli passed out on the couch mid-sentence, I stepped out onto the porch to breathe in the cool air. I wasn't expecting company, but there he was, Gavin, leaning against one of the porch posts, sipping something from a dark mug. "You always this quiet?" he asked, without looking at me. I gave a small shrug. "Only when I don't know what to say." He nodded like he understood. "It's not a bad thing. Quiet can be honest." I wasn't sure how to respond to that, but I stayed, arms crossed against the chill, until the silence between us stopped feeling awkward and started feeling comfortable. Eventually, he walked inside, giving me a glance as he passed. Unreadable, but not unkind. I watched the stars a while longer, feeling something shift. I didn't know what it was. Not yet, but it felt like the start of something I hadn't planned for. The first morning at the lake house was all dew and golden light. I woke up to birdsong and the smell of coffee drifting down the hallway. Eli was still asleep, sprawled out across the couch like someone who fought their dreams all night. I padded into the kitchen barefoot, only to find Gavin already there. A mug in one hand, leaning against the counter, reading something on his phone. He looked up, gave a small nod. "Morning." I nodded back. "Morning." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was aware. Not like we didn't know what to say, More like we both understood that whatever this was, it didn't need to be filled. "You take it black?" he asked, gesturing to the pot. I did. He poured me a cup without another word. That was the beginning of a rhythm I hadn't expected. Gavin was everywhere, not intrusively, but like gravity. On the dock reading a paperback while I journaled. In the hallway when I went to shower, brushing past me with a towel over his shoulder. In the kitchen, always beating me to the coffee. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it lingered. He'd ask one or two questions, never invasive, but somehow they stuck to my ribs. Questions like, "You always keep that notebook on you? What do you think you'd be doing right now if you weren't here?" And once, after I made some dry joke Eli didn't catch, "You think a lot more than you say, don't you?" That last one came during a movie night. Eli had insisted on some ridiculous horror flick from the early 2000s. All bad acting and jump scares. Gavin sat at the far end of the couch, his legs stretched out, arms folded across his chest. I took the middle. Eli kept dozing off and jolting awake. I was pretending to watch the screen, but I was hyper-aware of Gavin. The way his fingers twitched occasionally, like he was resisting the urge to say something. The way he laughed, not loud, not often, but full-bodied when he did, like it surprised even him. Somewhere between a ghost reveal and a fake blood explosion. Gavin leaned in just slightly and said, voice low, "You don't talk much when you're comfortable, do you?" It wasn't a jab. More like an observation, a discovery. I blinked, thrown. "I guess not. Is that weird?" He tilted his head. "Not weird, just rare." We didn't speak for the rest of the film. But when it ended and Eli stumbled off to bed muttering about sequels, Gavin lingered for a moment. I stood to stretch and he rose too slowly, then walked past me, brushing just close enough that his arm skimmed mine. He didn't say goodnight. Neither did I. The next day we ended up on the dock together again, this time in the heat of late afternoon. I had my feet in the water, journal balanced on my knee. Gavin sat on the other end of the dock, not reading, not talking, just there. Eventually, I broke the silence. "You live nearby?" "An hour out," he replied. "Came up to get away from the city. Wasn't expecting company." "Sorry," I said quickly. He looked over, surprised. Wasn't a complaint. Another silence followed, not hostile, just dense. Like we were both aware of some current beneath our words. Something neither of us had touched yet. I caught him watching me again. Not in a predatory way. More like I was a painting he was trying to understand. "You do that a lot," I said before I could stop myself. "Do what?" "Look at me like you're trying to figure me out." He didn't deny it. "Maybe I am." I dropped my gaze, heart thudding in a way I didn't understand. I'd never had someone look at me like that before. Not with hunger, not with pity, not with flirtation, but with intent. Like he was listening even when I wasn't talking. Back inside that evening, Eli had decided it was burger night and cranked music through the Bluetooth speaker while he made a mess of the kitchen. Gavin and I mostly stayed out of the way. He cut tomatoes. I toasted buns. Our hands brushed more than once. I blamed the small counter space. I wasn't sure what he blamed it on, if anything. After dinner, Eli disappeared to FaceTime someone. I started cleaning up, rinsing dishes while the faucet hissed. Gavin was drying beside me in silence. At one point, our arms bumped, and I instinctively flinched back. Not because it hurt, because it didn't, because it felt safe. And I didn't know what to do with that. Gavin paused, dish towel in hand. I felt him looking at me again. "You okay?" he asked, voice quiet. I nodded without looking up. "Yeah, just tired." He didn't press, just nodded and kept drying. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, watching the ceiling fan spin. My body buzzed with tension that had no name, only shape. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't even know if I was allowed to want it. All I knew was that every time Gavin entered a room, it changed the temperature. And every time he left, I wished he hadn't. This was supposed to be a break. Just a few quiet days at the lake. And yet, here I was, caught in the gravity of someone who barely spoke, but but somehow said everything I'd been aching to hear. I wasn't expecting to see anyone that early in the morning, much less Gavin leaning against the porch rail with a tackle box in one hand and a thermos in the other. The sky was still painted in soft blue and gray, the lake wrapped in morning mist. Birds weren't even fully awake yet, and the world felt suspended, like it hadn't decided to start the day. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, stepping out onto the porch, arms wrapped around myself. Gavin nodded toward the lake. "Thought I'd fish a little." I followed his gaze out to the dock, now barely visible through the fog. "You fish?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not really. I've held a rod once at summer camp. Didn't catch anything. Got sunburned and cried about it." He gave me a look, amused, not mocking. "Well, lucky for you, I'm patient." I should have gone back inside. Crawled into bed. Pretended I didn't notice how good he looked in a simple hoodie. Sleeves pushed up, veins visible on his forearms. But instead I said, "I'll come." Gavin raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Eli never wants to wake up this early." "I'm not Eli." He smirked, just barely, then turned and walked down toward the dock without another word. I followed. The mist hung low, curling around the wooden planks like something alive. Gavin handed me a spare rod, then crouched beside the tackle box, fingers moving deftly. "This one's good for early morning," he said, holding up a small silver lure. "It catches the light just right." I crouched beside him, watching, half awake but buzzing. His presence had that effect, like too much coffee but with none of the anxiety. Just heat, stillness, possibility. He showed me how to hook the lure, slow, deliberate movements, then handed it over. "Your turn." I tried to mimic what he'd done, but my fingers fumbled. The line slipped, the hook caught on my thumb. I winced. "Here," he said softly, reaching for my hand. "Let me." His fingers wrapped around mine, warm, calloused. "Sure." He guided me through the motion slowly, our hands close, breaths mingling in the cool air. My chest felt tight, but not from nerves. From noticing. From being noticed. "There," he said finally, his voice low. "You're good." He didn't let go right away. When he finally did, I almost missed the weight of his hand. We cast our lines in silence, the plunk of the lure breaking the stillness. I tried not to look at him, but I could feel him there, not watching, just being. A few minutes passed, and then, of course, my line tangled. "Shit," I muttered, trying to fix it. Gavin looked over and chuckled. A deep, chesty laugh that surprised me. Not just because it was rare, but because it felt so real. "You're not exactly a natural," he said, teasing gently. "Nope. I'm a disaster." He shook his head. "You're not a disaster. You just think too hard." Excuse me for trying not to hook myself in the face. Gavin laughed again, a little softer this time. "Here, let me show you." This time he stood behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. His arms came around mine, guiding the rod, his breath warm near my ear. "Keep your wrist loose," he murmured. "It's not about muscle. It's about rhythm." I swallowed hard, nodding. We cast together, the line arcing through the air like it belonged there. The splash was clean. "See?" he said, stepping back. Not a disaster. But I barely heard him. My heart was thudding in my chest, every nerve tuned to the spot where his hand had rested on my back just seconds ago. We fished like that for a while. Quiet, peaceful. Occasionally he'd point out something, a bird, a ripple, a shift in the current. I liked how he spoke. Low, calm, like nothing needed to be more than it was. At one point, my lure snagged on something under the surface. I yanked too hard and slipped, nearly losing my balance. Without thinking, Gavin grabbed my arm, steadying me. "Careful," he said, holding on just a second longer than necessary. "Maybe I am a disaster," I said, breathless. He smiled, small but real. "Maybe, but at least you're trying." We both looked away at the same time, the moment too fragile to hold. When the sun finally crested the trees, and the mist began to burn off, we packed up in silence. He handed me the tackle box, our fingers brushing again. My skin felt electric. As we walked back to the house, side by side, he said, casually, "You're welcome to come out again, if you want." I nodded. "Yeah, I want." He didn't say anything else. But he didn't need to. We went out again the next morning. Same mist, same coffee in hand, same quiet, but something was different. I couldn't say what exactly. Only that I'd barely slept, and it wasn't from the hard mattress or lake insects tapping at the window. It was him, Gavin. The way his hand had guided mine. The way he said "you think too hard," like he knew me better than people who'd known me for years. When I stepped onto the dock, he was already there, seated on the edge, legs swinging over the still water. He looked over his shoulder when I approached and offered a half smile. "You came back," he said. "You invited me," I replied. "Didn't think you'd say yes." I shrugged and sat beside him. I wasn't done learning. He handed me a rod. I didn't need help this time. The first 30 minutes passed in silence. Not an awkward one, but something thoughtful. Every now and then, I caught myself glancing at him. The way his jaw flexed slightly when he concentrated, the subtle creases near his eyes when he squinted toward the sun. He looked older than Eli, sure, but not worn, just lived in the most beautiful way. "Been a long time since I came here and didn't want to be alone," he said suddenly, eyes on the water. I turned, surprised by the break in quiet. "You come out here often?" "Yeah, used to come with someone." The way he said it, low, simple, made me tread carefully. "Partner." He nodded once. 6 years. We ended things last spring. Too much noise. Too many words we didn't mean, and not enough of the ones we did.
"I'm sorry."
He shrugged. "Don't be." I think I was holding on to the idea of what we were supposed to be, not what we actually were. He wanted more. I wanted less. Not in a bad way, just less noise. Less pressure to always be on. I watched his fingers curl around the rod. They were steady, patient, like everything he said had been rehearsed in his head for a long time before he said it aloud. "And now?" I asked softly. "Now I want quiet," he said. "But not loneliness." That line stayed with me, quiet, but not loneliness. I knew exactly what he meant. I didn't say anything, and neither did he. Not until a little later, when the sun was higher and the lake shimmered like glass. He reeled in his line, rested the rod beside him, then turned his head slightly toward me. "I like being around you," he said simply. "More than I should, maybe." The words hit me like a ripple under the boat. Subtle, but powerful enough to shift my balance. I blinked. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away, just looked at me. Not smiling, not nervous, just present. Like he wanted me to feel what he meant more than hear it. Then he said, "You're easy to be with. Most people fill space just to avoid silence. You don't." I swallowed, unsure what to say. "It's rare," he added. "And it makes me feel like myself again." The rod in my hands suddenly felt too heavy, my chest too tight. "Gavin," I started, unsure of where I was going with it, but he shook his head gently. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. That's all." Then, like he flipped a switch, he looked out toward the water again and pointed toward a distant ripple. "You see that? That's a largemouth. They usually hit around this time." Just like that, he changed the subject. Not because he regretted saying what he said, but because he meant it and didn't need anything in return. I tried to focus on my rod, the water, anything but the thundering in my chest. But everything felt different now, more fragile, more real. Later, we paddled out in the rowboat. Eli was off in town with some girl he'd matched with on a dating app, so it was just us. Gavin rowed slowly, rhythmically, while I watched the shoreline slip by. "Ever been in love?" he asked. The question came out of nowhere, but I didn't flinch. "Not really," I admitted. "I thought I was once, but it wasn't love. More like longing. There's a difference." "Yeah," I said, watching the ripples. "Love doesn't ache as much. Or if it does, it aches better." He smiled faintly. "That's a good way of putting it." We anchored near a cove where lily pads floated like little boats. Gavin passed me the bait box. I tried not to overthink what I was doing. but my fingers trembled slightly as I hooked the worm. "I meant what I said earlier," he murmured. I looked up. "About liking you." My heart stuttered. "I know." He held my gaze. "You're not sure what to do with it." "No, I'm not." "That's okay." I looked down at the water, watched the lines drift. "It's not that I don't want to. It's just. You don't have to explain," he said gently. "There's no rush, no expectations. I've done the fast thing before. Doesn't last." His words soothed something I didn't realize had been clenched inside me for years. I looked at him again, really looked. The lines around his eyes, the sunburn on the bridge of his nose, the steady warmth in his voice. "I like being around you too," I said quietly. "More than I probably should." He didn't smile. He just breathed out slowly and nodded. That was it. No kiss. No dramatic swell of music. Just two men on a boat, drifting quietly in the morning sun, with hearts open but untouched. And still, something inside me shifted. Something deep. Something good. It was Eli's idea, of course. "Come on," he said, practically bouncing in his hiking boots. "There's a trail that leads to a lookout point. You'll thank me when you see the view." I didn't argue. After 3 quiet days fishing and floating, I figured it wouldn't hurt to get my legs moving. Besides, part of me needed space to think, to breathe away from the unspoken tension that always seemed to hum between Gavin and me like an electrical current. The trail wasn't difficult, not at first. Just a winding path through pine trees and soft, fern-covered underbrush. Eli kept talking about work, about some girl who ghosted him, about how he didn't get why people liked camping but loved this lake house. I nodded and followed, smiling when I needed to. We were maybe halfway to the top when it happened. One minute I was stepping over a root, the next my foot slipped on damp leaves. My ankle turned at an angle that made a sharp bolt of pain shoot up my leg, and I went down hard, catching myself on my hands. Eli rushed back to me. "Shit, you okay?" I hissed through my teeth, trying to rotate my ankle. "Nope, not great." "Can you stand?" I tried. Bad idea. The second I put weight on it, a fresh surge of pain made me stumble again. "I'll go get Gavin," Eli said quickly, already pulling out his phone. I didn't argue. 15 minutes later, I heard footsteps through the brush and looked up to see Gavin appear through the trees, face tight with concern. He was wearing a flannel shirt, the sleeves rolled up, and had brought a cold bottle of water in one hand. "You're okay?" he asked, kneeling beside me. "Just twisted," I muttered. "It's not broken." "Let me see." His hands were gentle but firm, fingers pressing carefully around my ankle. I tried not to flinch. His touch was clinical until it wasn't. At one point, his thumb lingered a little too long, and I felt my breath catch. "You'll be fine," he said finally. "But you're not walking back." I blinked. "What do you mean?" Then he stood, turned around, and crouched slightly. "Come on. Up." "You're kidding." "Nope. You're lighter than Eli. And he broke his leg in high school, so I've done this before." With no real choice, and my ankle throbbing, I carefully wrapped my arms around his neck and let him lift me onto his back. His hands gripped under my thighs, and I held tight as he straightened up. "Try not to strangle me," he said, his voice dry. I huffed a laugh against his shoulder.
"No promises."
The walk back took longer, but Gavin didn't complain once. He moved slowly, steadily, talking softly to Eli when needed, but mostly silent. I was hyper-aware of his body beneath mine, the warmth of his back, the slow rhythm of his breath, the strength in his shoulders. I could have closed my eyes and stayed like that forever. When we reached the house, Gavin set me down on the couch with careful precision, handed me a pillow, and elevated my foot with a folded blanket. "Rest," he said. "I'll grab ice." Eli hovered for a bit, tossing me ibuprofen and a protein bar, then announced he was going for a swim and vanished. I was halfway through the bar when Gavin returned, placing an ice pack gently on my ankle. "You didn't have to carry me." He looked at me like the question made no sense. Yes, I did. That night, after dinner, the pain was manageable. I'd wrapped the ankle, Gavin had checked on me twice, and Eli had finally gone to bed after another round of overcooked marshmallows. I sat alone on the porch, a blanket around my shoulders and a glass of cold tea in hand. The lake shimmered quietly under the moonlight. My ankle ached, but my chest ached more, with something I couldn't name. Then I heard the door creak open behind me. Gavin stepped out, holding a mug. He said nothing, just sat beside me on the top porch step, close but not touching. He handed me the tea without a word. We sat like that for a long time, just the two of us, breathing in the night. Finally, I asked, voice barely above a whisper, "Did you mean it? When you said you liked being around me?" Gavin didn't look surprised or uncertain. He just nodded. Every word. I stared at the lake, fingers tightening around the mug. "I don't really know what to do with that," I admitted. "You don't have to do anything. That's the problem," I said. "I want to." He turned his head, watching me. "But you're afraid." I nodded. "Yeah." Another silence settled, but this one felt different. He didn't try to fix it, didn't reach for my hand or say something poetic. He just stayed, like staying was the only language he needed. And maybe that was enough. I didn't move closer, but I didn't move away either. And that, somehow, felt like the bravest thing I'd done in years. The lake looked silver under the moon. I'd never seen it like that before. Not during the day, not even at sunset. But now, with the stars overhead and a light breeze brushing the trees, it looked like something from a dream. Soft, endless, glowing. Eli had gone to bed early after one too many hard lemonades and an overly enthusiastic game of cards. The house had finally gone still. I sat alone on the porch with my wrapped ankle propped up, trying not to think too hard about Gavin, about what he said, about what I almost said back. The screen door creaked open behind me. I didn't need to turn. I knew it was him. "You're not sleeping?" Gavin asked. I shook my head. Didn't feel like it. He stepped out onto the porch, barefoot, in a dark t-shirt and swim trunks. "You feel like swimming?" I looked at him. "Now? It's the best time. Water's warm. No bugs. No one around. I have a twisted ankle." He gave me a small smirk. "I'll help you in." Something about the way he said it, calm, gentle, sure, made it impossible to say no. We walked slowly down the dock. Or rather, he walked. I limped beside him, leaning on his arm without shame now. The moon cast our shadows long and wavy across the dock. The lake glassy and still except for the occasional ripple from something unseen. At the edge, Gavin let go of me and stepped in first, slow and easy. The water came up to his waist, then chest, and then he turned, held out a hand. "Come on." I took a breath and stepped down the ladder, the water cool but not cold, wrapping around me like silk. He reached out, steadying me as I eased in. And just like that, we were floating. No splashing, no talking, just drifting side by side, the stars above, the water around us. His shoulder brushed mine as we floated. Then again. I didn't move. The water held us close. Not enough for an embrace, but enough for the air between us to hum. Minutes passed. Maybe more. Finally, I whispered, "I think I want to be around you too." I didn't look at him when I said it. I didn't have to. I felt it, the quiet shift in the way he exhaled. The energy around us thickening, not heavy, but full. Then, underwater, his hand found mine. No splash, no drama, just his fingers slowly threading through mine. Felt like the loudest thing in the universe. I closed my eyes and let the moment stretch. I didn't need a kiss. I didn't need fireworks. I needed this, the kind of closeness that didn't demand anything, that asked nothing but presence. We didn't stay long, just enough to let the silence say what we couldn't. He helped me out of the water, wrapped a towel around my shoulders, then walked me slowly back up the dock, both of us damp and barefoot and quiet. Back at the house, we didn't speak as we changed into dry clothes. He tossed me one of his hoodies, and I didn't give it back. We sat on the porch couch again, side by side under the same blanket, staring out at the dark water. Neither of us reached for more, and yet I'd never felt more held. Eventually, my head tilted onto his shoulder. His hand rested lightly on my knee. The kind of touch that said I'm here without needing to be more than that. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember waking up hours later. The sky still dark, the blanket still warm, his shoulder still under my cheek. He was still there. So was I. I started packing before breakfast. The lake house was quieter that morning. Still peaceful, but it felt different. Like it knew I was leaving. Like the walls had heard too much and were bracing themselves for the silence that would follow. Eli was in the kitchen, half awake, mumbling about checking traffic on the way back. He didn't notice the way I lingered with my coffee mug, staring out the window. Didn't see how long I stood at the edge of my room, just looking at the bed where I'd fallen asleep still wrapped in Gavin's hoodie. He hadn't said anything that morning, just offered a small smile when we crossed paths in the hallway. Like we both knew that if we said anything too clearly, it would break the spell. My bag was almost zipped when I stepped outside for air. I wandered down toward the side of the house, not quite ready to say goodbye to the trees, the porch, the sound of water slapping gently against the dock. That's when I saw him. Gavin stood by the shed, holding something small in his palm. He looked up when I approached, his face unreadable, but not cold. "You heading out soon?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just needed a minute." He nodded like he understood. "I was gonna leave this in your bag," he said, holding something out. But that felt like a coward's move. In his hand was an old fishing lure, slightly rusted, the paint chipped at the edges. A red ribbon was tied around the end in a soft, messy knot. I looked at it, then up at him. "What's this?" "It was my first one," he said. "Caught a catfish the size of a toddler with it when I was 9. My dad made me tie the ribbon around it, so I'd always know which was mine." I laughed softly. "And now it's mine?" He hesitated, then said, "I'm not asking for anything, but if you ever want a reason to come back, you'll have one." My throat tightened. I took it from him carefully, like it might shatter. The metal was warm from his hand. The ribbon frayed. It was a small thing, but it felt enormous. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick. He nodded. "You don't have to decide anything now." "I know." We stood there for a moment, long enough to make it mean something, short enough to not make it harder than it already was. Then I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him. It wasn't the kind of hug you give a friend. It wasn't even the kind you give someone you're saying goodbye to. It was held breath. It was almost. It was don't go, without either of us saying the words. He held me just as tightly, and when I finally pulled back, neither of us smiled. But neither of us looked away. The city felt louder than I remembered. It wasn't the honking or the sirens or the conversations bleeding out of cafe windows. It was me. The noise was inside now. A constant hum under my skin that hadn't been there before I left. I unpacked slowly when I got back. Laundry in one pile, books in another, but the fishing lure went straight to my desk. I didn't even think about it. I just cleared a space near my lamp and placed it there. Ribbon still tied, slightly crooked. Every time I looked at it, I thought of the lake. I thought of misty mornings and wet wood beneath bare feet. Of Gavin's voice, low and steady, saying, "You don't talk much when you're comfortable, do you?" I thought about the porch, the quiet, the way he held me. Not like he was trying to convince me of anything, but like he understood I wasn't ready to say things out loud yet. And still, he stayed. A week passed. I kept my phone nearby, but there were no texts, no calls, just silence. But it didn't feel like being forgotten. Felt like patience. Like waiting in a quiet boat, trusting the water to ripple when it's ready. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, a small package arrived at my door. No return address. Just my name in handwriting I knew immediately. Inside was a folded piece of thick paper, a hand-drawn map. Trails, docks, tiny sketches of trees and fish, the edges shaded in with charcoal. It was the lake house. Every curve, every footpath, every cove. At the bottom, written in the corner, "Still waking up early. Come fishing." That was it. No pressure, no question. Just a line in the water, cast gently. I stared at it for a long time, heart full of something I hadn't named until that moment. Peace, and maybe something more. That night, I packed a bag. Not a big one, just enough for a weekend. I threw in my toothbrush, a flannel shirt, and one of Gavin's hoodies I still hadn't given back. I didn't leave a note for Eli. I didn't message Gavin either. I just went. The drive felt different this time. Not like running away. More like returning to something I hadn't realized was mine. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, the sun was just beginning to set, casting long golden shadows across the trees. The lake glimmered like it remembered me. The porch lights were on. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. The screen door creaked open before I reached the steps. And there he was, barefoot again, same old hoodie, like nothing had changed and everything had. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. He just opened the door wider and stepped aside. And I walked in. We didn't have a dramatic reunion. No big speech.
No kiss.
Just 2 mugs of coffee in the early morning. 2 rods resting on the dock. 2 sets of footprints in the dew. And a feeling steady, quiet, deep. I didn't know what I wanted when I came to the lake house, but now I know it wasn't rest I needed. It was him. If Gavin made your heart ache, and you'd follow that fishing lure back too, drop a comment below and tell us your favorite moment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more soft, slow-burn gay love stories. We've got more coming, stories that don't shout, but stay with you.